All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Talent.
Ready, camera.
And cue talent.
2,
One.
1. Roll to record.
Greetings and thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we run down some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Starting for the Dallas Mavericks at the position of center, number 32 in your program, number 1 in your heart, Scott Ott. And right beside me here in Los Angeles, California, a man riding the bench for the Los Angeles Clippers, Leo Terrell.
Oh, man.
Now it's time to go to the top of the rundown. And we begin with the fair-minded civil rights defense attorney.
I saw this movie. At the top of my rundown, Iran's leaders said the hit film American Sniper encourages violence against Muslims. The Ayatollah Khamenei told an Iran newspaper that he hadn't seen the movie, but he has heard about the plot. The film is about the life of a U.S. Navy SEALs marksman who is considered the most lethal sniper in American history. Khamenei was quoted as saying the movie encourages a Christian or non-Muslim to harass and offend Muslims as far as they could. He added Muslims have no safety here in the West, calling the movie propaganda. John, I saw that movie, and that movie's not propaganda. That's a movie about an American hero who was defending and saving Americans' lives. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, the TMZ caught up with Clint Eastwood, who made this movie, as he was leaving Dan Tana's, one of our favorite restaurants here in Los Angeles. And they said, well, people are saying that this is pro-war propaganda. What say you? He said, no, it's not. It's an anti-war movie. This is showing war, warts and all, and showing you what a serious life and death thing that war is. So if the Ayatollah is coming down with that position, then they missed the point that Clint Eastwood was trying to make.
Absolutely. Scott, you know, there was some tweets early when this movie was released by Michael Moore trying to make the analogy that a sniper is a coward. Those tweets were retracted after he received the backlash. It seems to me that a sniper saves lives. Your thoughts?
Well, that was exactly Chris Kyle's attitude. Not only did I see the movie, but I read the book right after that. And his whole attitude all the way through is, I have no qualms about shooting these savages who are trying to kill my friends, my colleagues, the Marines and the soldiers that he was working with. For every one of them he took out, he was saving dozens, perhaps, of lives. And so he was doing what he had to do to protect his guys. In fact, it got to be a very difficult situation between him and his wife because he kept going back for more tours of duty, and he kept re-upping because he felt an obligation to protect their lives. That's exactly what this is. And by the way, if the Ayatollah wants to start getting in the business of doing movie reviews, I'm sure we could find a spot for him right here on PJ TV. Although I think that there are things in the Hadith, perhaps, or the Quran about which hand you're allowed to use for the thumbs up, because you always use the same hand to wipe yourself, so you better not use that hand to do the thumbs up.
You know, John, the one part about American Sniper that doesn't get as much attention, but was played up in American Sniper, is the fact that Chris Kyle had a lot of post-traumatic stress. I mean, his adjustment back home to domestic life was tough.
Well, how could you not when you've made that many tours to the Middle East and you've seen as much death and destruction as he's seen? You know, I also, in this issue, have a hard time accepting the fact that we now listen to what foreign dictators think about American movies. We saw it happen with North Korea. Mm-hmm. We're now seeing it happen with the Ayatollah. If suddenly we stop making movies because they might offend third world banana republic presidents or generals or whatever the hell it is that they are, then what are we going to do in Hollywood? Just keep making sequels to Freddy Got Fingered?
Well, I got news for you. The blowback from Iran and from North Korea encourages more speech, encourages more. That's the great thing. The exchange of this debate, as silly as they may be, the exchange of debate encouraged more Americans to go out and see this film. And I think right now it's the highest grossing American war film ever.
And you know what? This movie might actually bring eyeballs to the Oscars, which are going to be this weekend.
Yeah.
They were anticipating very low viewership because a lot of people didn't see the movies that were nominated this time around. But people are going to watch to root for this movie, and I think that's great. That's great for the country. It's great for the Oscars.
Oh, yes, definitely. It's a powerful
movie.
And
John, may I paraphrase? May I paraphrase the President of the United States, who told the United Nations, there is no future for those who slander Clint Eastwood.
All right, Scott, what do you have for us?
Well, at the top of my rundown, no rules for war. Dr. Ben Carson told Fox News that if we're going to beat the Islamic State, we should start soon, and we shouldn't hesitate to put boots on the ground. He also said we should release our U.S. troops from the fear that they'll be prosecuted for doing their job to defeat the enemy. Take a listen.
We have people trying to manage the military who know nothing about the military, know nothing about military strategy. And our military needs to know that they're not going to be prosecuted when they come back because somebody has said you did something that was politically incorrect. There is no such thing as a politically correct war. We need to grow up. We need to mature. If you're going to have rules for war, you should just have a rule that says no war. Other than that, you know, we have to win.
Now, men, is this too brash for a potential presidential candidate, or is it exactly what Americans would like to hear?
Can I take that question? Yes.
You may.
Thank you, Scott. Let me sit here and say this. I did a show on a rival cable company, and we discussed Ben Carson. And with all due respect to the doctor, he's a doctor. He doesn't have the experience, the expertise to talk about all these other issues that goes beyond medicine. And he cannot use the presidential platform as a training ground. Now, listen, he has every right to run for office, but he is not qualified to talk about the various issues. Expert in medicine, a non-expert in everything else.
I love what he had to say
With all
here.
due respect to the President of the United States, who happened to have been briefly a senator before and a community organizer before that, I'd like to put my hands in the guy who knows how to separate conjoined twins rather than the guy who knows how to hand out forms on the streets of Chicago.
Listen, you know what? He hasn't even run for an elected office. Under the scrutiny of, he's been at one major prayer breakfast. He got national attention, and a cable company that I will not mention had him on his program every day, and they created a Frankenstein monster in Ben Carson.
But John,
so what do you think about Ben Carson?
I mean, Leo's already running the super PAC against Ben Carson, John. But what do you think about this particular issue he was talking about? Should there be rules for war, or should we say when we're going in to win?
Look, I like this. Sometimes I have the same attitude about war that Burger King has about the menu. Sometimes you got to break the rules. And the fact that Ben Carson says this, it endears me to him. Now, not as much so as I am to the King of Jordan. That's a guy that I respect.
Yeah,
you
right.
want a leader that'll look you right in the eye, will look right at the camera. And when he's asked a question about terrorists, what he would do with terrorists, he'll be very stern and say, here's what I would do with terrorists. I would kick them in the crotch so hard I would tear ligaments in my foot.
Let me just, I got to jump in on this. Shame on both of you. We have rules of war, believe it or not. And the Geneva Convention, when we looked at what happened in World War II, we look at how other people handle American prisoners. We're better than that. We're better than the other guys, and we do have certain rules. And Ben Carson, unconditional warfare is not the American moral value system, period. That's my word.
All right, there you go. I'm beginning to believe that Leo doesn't like him.
No.
Top of my rundown, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was buzzed at the State of the Union address back in January. The 81-year-old was seen with her head down, appearing to fall asleep during the speech. Uh-oh. Somebody take her pulse. Can Justice Breyer count to 0? Ginsburg says that Justice Anthony Kennedy brought a bottle of wine to dinner, which they drank, and that led her to being not so sober. In her defense, Leo, I've seen so many of these State of the Union addresses. Having a little bit in you makes it actually go by that much faster.
You can see how lively she was. Head down, naughty off. That was the best way to handle that speech. I saw nothing wrong with
Look
the
at that.
justice. Yes, she was listening.
She looks like a corpse. She just flatlined.
Hey, nothing wrong with having a glass of wine with her dinner. She was tired, 81 years
But when
young.
you weigh 84 pounds, if you have a glass of wine with dinner, you're blowing a point too.
She wasn't driving. She was not driving, so she's not a danger
Listen.
on the road. I have no problem with that.
Listen, both of you guys, first of all, I think it's really inappropriate for you to remark on her looks like that. When she was a young girl, she was quite fetching, and that was only like 115 years ago. She was beautiful. There are Matthew Brady daguerreotypes of her as a young cheerleader where she is quite fetching. And then the other thing is, nobody slipped her a roofie here. I mean, you have to sit through a presidential speech. What could be more tedious than that? And not only that, it gets interrupted, so the speech actually is like 3 times longer than it needs to be, so that the Democrats can get up and give a standing ovation every time the president, coughs at a comma.
Now, here's what's bizarre about this. Talk about strange bedfellows. Apparently, her closest friends in Washington, D.C. are the Scalias.
Yeah.
And so she revealed this at a conference that she was speaking at with Scalia. And she explained the whole thing. And Scalia looks at her and takes a pause and goes, well, that's the first sensible thing you've ever done.
Well, it shows you that they may disagree politically and on the law, but they become good friends on the bench. And the fact that she and Scalia are close friends, that's encouraging, because they can agree to disagree professionally based on their philosophical and legal opinions.
Serious point.
There's hope for me and Leo.
How bad is it, or is it bad at all, that you look at that picture? Let's put the picture back up at the Supreme Court. Look at the ages of all of them sitting there. These are the people that decide the law. And they're not supposed to legislate, but they do.
Right.
Those people there decide the law that the rest of us have to live under. A country, I guarantee you, they don't understand in very fundamental ways.
You know what, John? You're looking at their appearance. We love them for their brains, for their knowledge, their ability to spend all those hours while you were out partying, drinking. They were in the law schools. They were in the library studying the law.
4 o'clock this morning, Leo.
Right, and they're in the law books. They're in the law library studying. And as a lawyer, I can appreciate those guys. It's not what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside, John. Those guys are very smart.
Now, let me say, John, as a guy who was raised by his grandfather, I appreciate their age and the wisdom that can come with age. My big concern about all of them is they're all attorneys.
Hey, you need us. You need us.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips for Leo Terrell, joining me here in Los Angeles, and Scott Ott in Dallas, Texas. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.